Additionally, what we see with fitness beats truth theorem is that human fictions, tend to be better for survival. And we're seeing that there's a lot of fictional things. So I hope I don't upset people too much, although I do enjoy doing that. But we're going to talk about religion. And I think it's important for the meaning of life because a lot of people do things in terms of meaning based on religion and God, and that forms a foundation. So in the belief of God, there is a question which will determine if you can hear the truth. I think this will separate people. Do you want to believe or do you want to know? Do you want to believe in God or do you want to know God? And that I think will really separate people. Where if you want to believe and you can just feel that, nothing's going to convince you. You're pretty set. But if you want to know God, I think you have a chance of seeing that it's more of a fitness-based thing than it is about reality. So if you want to believe, you're trying to hold on to the belief in God because it is comforting. If you want to know, then you will need answers, rationality, coherence. That is the path to understanding. While this applies to religion and belief in God generally, I will consider Christianity. The Bible reportedly lists commandments from God. The Bible tells us how to poop. We should have a spot outside of our encampment and bury our poop with a tool. So this is Deuteronomy 23:12-15. You shall have a place outside the camp and you shall go out to it. And you shall have a trowel with your tools. And when you sit down outside, you shall dig a hole with it and turn back and cover up your excrement. And then these are just some examples. So here's some scriptures that relate to eating and handling shrimp. Leviticus, these you may eat, and of all that are in the waters, everything in the waters that has fins and scales, whether in the seas or in the rivers, you may eat. But anything in the seas or the rivers that has not fins and scales of the swarming creatures in the waters, and of the living creatures that are in the waters, is detestable to you. You shall regard them as detestable. You shall not eat any of their flesh, and you shall detest their carcasses. Everything in the waters that has not fins and scales is detestable to you. Again, in Deuteronomy, of all that are in the waters you may eat these, whatever has fins and scales you may eat. So, as for homosexual activity, the Bible has two main scriptures. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. So, from a purely objective standpoint, let's think of the evolutionary benefits of each of these commandments. Bury your poop with a dedicated tool keeps humans from contaminating each other. If we don't have waste management, many of us will get sick and die. But by burying our poop, we solve many of these issues. And it doesn't take a lot of complex understanding, you just follow the rules. So why did God say to only eat fish with fins? In biblical times, thousands of years ago, shrimp were genuinely unclean. They gave you food poisoning. We didn't know how to clean them properly to reliably avoid getting sick. By avoiding them as a food source, many people lived. The Bible condemns homosexuality for both sexes. But is there an evolutionary benefit? The finer points are complex, but my guess is accepted homosexuality reduces childbirth for the group. In biblical times, your success and power were largely determined by the size of your group. Homosexual families have less children, so homosexuality is outlawed, increasing the number of sexually reproductive families. We can see at the time, all the scriptures contained a useful strategy for survival, which we understand more scientifically now. Groups of people who bury their poop will have less sickness and disease than those who don't. We don't care about burying poop now because the real problem is sanitation. Eating shrimp would have killed you in those days, but now we can properly clean them for consumption. Accepted homosexuality likely disrupted expected family planning. We don't need to outbreed neighboring competitive groups. However, we still deal with anti-homosexuality today. The support for behavior doesn't need to be well justified to get the benefits of the practice. A person who believes in washing their hands of any poop after they touch it get the functional benefits whether they believe the reason is due to germ theory or God says poop is a spiritual abomination. From the perspective of the fitness beats truth theorem and an understanding of evolution, we can see how the idea of God arises. The idea of God is a fiction which evolved into our minds. God has been with us in as many forms as our environment takes. When we are close with a thriving nature, sapiens believe in many gods and spirits. Hunter and gatherer tribes think that the gods are forces behind everything, but care little for human lives. They wouldn't have prayed to them. Sapiens which traveled in the desert began to believe in one God, the supreme God of survival. As we formed cities, the faraway universal God became a more personal God, which cares deeply for all of our personal woes. In cities, our lives depend on other humans. It makes sense that our God would listen to our prayers and understand us. The idea of God became a powerful force for attracting fictional beliefs and practices with real survival benefits. To this day, a Christian person can move to a new country and still have a community of support from a church in their network. Religious people continue breeding at higher rates, and due to the structure of their religious community, have more stability. If we look at religion as a belief system which can be viewed as a dissipative structure, we see religion is like a living creature, like all ideas. If a religion doesn't survive in the minds and actions of believers, it ceases to be. For a religion to persist through time, it needs to be adopted, solidified, translated, and spread. Religions which change too much don't persist and are absorbed by dominating religions. The most popular religions are the religions which focus on converting non-believers into believers. Thus, they grow their numbers, winning at the group size game. Religion has constraints based on survival as well. A major downside to belief in God is what is called metaphysical baggage. So religion really sounds like something that doesn't exist or make sense. It's not much about cause and effect. We have to accept all of these ideas which don't match reality, like souls, afterlives, creation, etc. You might hold on to the belief that the earth was formed only 5,000 years ago, when all evidence and argument says much longer. Wouldn't this be bad from a fitness perspective? The truth of these claims don't have much of an impact on our day-to-day life. People can survive believing all kinds of falsehoods. In fact, declaring an absurdity, Jesus and God are one and the same, a part of a Holy Trinity, serves a group function. When people say extreme statements, they signal their conformity to the group. They're demonstrating loyalty by denying reality and mark themselves as a true believer. People have long known that religions give benefits, and they follow the rituals without deeply believing. Some humans may be trapped into believing in some kind of a God. For generations, we have bred based on the religious teachings, intersubjective beliefs. Perhaps that has changed how some of us are structured. Perhaps God and religion are necessary parts of any intelligent species' evolutionary story, a strategy which boosts the whole species. We do have much to owe religion in its gifts to humanities, but religion served its purpose when our species could not bear the weight of our ignorance. So many of us cannot sit with uncertainty. Life is terrifying, full of suffering, and if we've lived long enough, we will feel empty of meaning. In God, we take all of the fear and uncertainty and ease it with answers or attempts to control outcomes with prayer and ritual. God represents a safety net, and the world is based on justice. People don't often pray for daily tasks, but more people pray and perform rituals in chaotic times with risky odds. Religion also codifies morality and passes on preferences. By describing pure and impure, religion shapes our sense of disgust. Religion builds buttons and reactions in us, then presses them for control throughout our lives. People in power have used religious people as a tool, steering them by hijacking authority figures. I think we should see religion for what it is. Once one of the best outlooks to get a person successfully through life, that is now obsolete. We should continue religion for what is good in it and abandon the rest to the Dark Ages. So that's just my take on it too, but I do think that having the idea of a God helps us to attach a lot of fictional beliefs in a unified way. It's also a really good story because people seem to generally accept and believe it, so it spreads. And I think there are also some other interesting psychological principles that this is preying on, like maybe it's an emotional memory from how we used to view our parents. Our parents seemed like a god to us when we were infants, and that memory stuck around so that we seem like we have so much faith that there's definitely a God. But that's getting a little further. What I want to say though is, moving on and continuing with the fitness beats truth theorem, we would expect to see brains with more internal input than external input. So that is, incoming sensory input matters less than how our brains transform the incoming data into a useful representation to maximize utility. And that is exactly what we see. So the input that you get is less important than the processing that you do to make that useful.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this clip, please consider checking out the full video and the series linked in the description.